Oh, hey guys! Today I want to practice my reading, and you're gonna have many ways to practice your reading. But everyone reads with a book, right? You can practice reading by reading a book or open a website and read something you like, but it has to be in English to practice your reading. And the best choice for me is to read some books, but with chapters. Yeah, Jacqueline Wilson's book, I got nearly all of them, and they're all chapter books, which is a good way for me to practice my reading. Because each chapter of her books are very long, it'll go up to 30 minutes straight. So why don't read one chapter every day? Yeah, of course, it'll be fascinating. Alright, so of course, I will continue reading Wait Me Goodbye book by Jacqueline Wilson. And this time, it has to be chapter 12. Of course, in the last chapter, you remember in chapter 11, Mrs. Mad decided to buy all the clothes for the children. So let's see what will they get in chapter 12. All right. Chapter 12. The draper's was larger than the other shops with a double front. The sign said Edwards and Daughter in gold writing. I like the idea of daughter instead of a son. I imagine Dad coming back from the army and starting up his own brush shop out up on Saturdays. And when I left school, I'll work with him full time. We'll have a sign on our shop, Smith and Daughter. And folk would come from far and wide to buy our range of superior brushes. Ladies with long hair like Mrs. Waverly would insist on our fine bristle hairbrushes. Men as bold as Archie would still want a set of our tortoiseshell brushes to take pride of place on their bathroom shelves. Our fame would spread far and wide. Maybe the Queen would want one of our curling brushes for her shiny brown hair, and Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret Rose would squabble over who got our one and only real silver brush and mirror set. Shirley, what's sticking your eye in the window? You've gone all dreamy, said Mrs. Waverly. I blinked. The window display was particularly dreary. Limp-check dresses, draped on headless plaster models, rows of thick aisle stockings, and depressing salmon pink underwear, floppy sun hats and sou'westers, and ugly lace-up shoes, marching 2 by 2 in a random pattern. Mrs. Waverly was going to buy clothes for the boys here? I had a vision of Kevin with a sun hat crammed over his jug ears, wearing a pink corset and brown clodhoppers, and shook with silent laughter. We trooped into the shop and lolled against the wooden counter, while a middle-aged lady with a tape measure round her shoulders, Daughter, buzzed around trying to please Mrs. Waverly, clearly surprised she would come to the shop. I wonder if she bought her underwear at Edwards. She certainly didn't buy her silk blouses or stylish trousers or long gowns there. She'll go to Harrods or Selfridge's for them. I was sure. Mom and I went to grand department stores every December when we went to the West End to see the Christmas lights. We never bought anything there, as it was all very expensive. But it doesn't cost so much as a farthing to have a look, said Mom. I like a plain white cotton shirt for each of the boys, and 1 pair of short trousers, and a jersey each, too, as it will be getting cold soon. Boys, go into the dressing room with Miss Edwards. We'll bring you clothes to try on, said Mrs. Waverly. It was strange. She seemed so on her house on the hill, but now she acted like any posh lady giving orders, and Miss Edwards jumped to it, scurrying backwards and forwards, plunking shirts and jumpers and shorts out of drawers in wooden cabinets. She didn't need to measure Kevin or Archie with her tape. She just gave them one quick glance and sized them in her head, though she frowned at Kevin's long arms and legs. There was a lot of scuffling and muttering behind the curtain as Kevin and Archie got changed. Ready, boys? Miss Edward asked, and then opened the curtain with a flourish like a magician. Archie was transformed. I've seen him look and wave like in dirty red clothes, ridiculous in a lady's woolly jumper, and comical in his pants. But apart from his lack of hair and his shirt and short trousers, he looked like an ordinary little boy. They fitted him perfectly. Poor Kevin wasn't so lucky. Miss Edwards had given him the biggest size of boy's shirt. The sleeve barely reached his wrist, but the shoulders were baggy. His short trousers were particularly distressed. They came halfway up his thigh. His pale, spindly legs seemed to go on forever. "Oh dear," said Mrs. Waverley. "It's the biggest size of boys' short trousers, madam. But he's so tall," said Miss Edwards. She looked at Kevin reproachfully as if he'd grown that big on purpose. Mrs. Waverley and Miss Edwards sighed together. Kevin flushed. Even his ears went bright red. "I can't bear it." "Could he have some long trousers?" I asked. "Men's ones." "But he's only a boy," said Mrs. Waverley. "How old are you, Kevin?" 10, going on 11. Kevin's voice was hoarse with emotion. "Could I have some long trousers, miss?" "Well, I'm not sure what your headmaster will say when you start school next week. Try a pair on and we'll see what they look like on you," she said. Miss Edwards provided him with a pair of men's trousers, looking doubtful. "They'll be much too big around the waist," she said. "He's as slender as a girl." Archie snorted, and Kevin glared. He drew the curtain and struggled into the long trousers, taking a long time about it. "Kevin," Mrs. Waverley called. "Come along, we haven't got all day. Do those ones fit you?" Yes," Kevin gasped. "Yes, they do fit, honest. I'll take them off now and—" "Don't take them off. We want to see what they look like," said Mrs. Waverley, and she pulled the curtain open. Kevin stood there, clutching the trousers by the waist. Miss Edwards was right. They were much too big. If he let them go, they'd drop to his knees. But even so, the long trousers suited him. The cuffs came right down to his plimsoll. He looked different without his knobbly knees and bonky ankles, or display, nowhere near as gawky. He looked almost like a man. "I told you they would be too big," said Miss Edwards, "and that's the smallest waist size we stock in men's trousers." "I don't care. I can hold them up. They look tremendous," Kevin said hoarsely. "Perhaps a belt might help," Mrs. Waverley suggested. Miss Edwards found him a strip elastical belt with the neck clubs. The trousers still bunched at the waist, but the belt helped enormously. "Oh, please can I have them, miss?" he begged. "Oh, yes, of course you must have them," said Mrs. Waverley. "They look very smart." She was peering at his plimsoll. His big toes had poked holes in them. "We better buy you a proper pair of shoes to go with the trousers." "Leather breeches would be just the ticket," said Miss Edwards. "I want a leather breeches, and I especially want a snake belt. I want one just like Kev's," Archie cried. Miss Edwards frowned disapprovingly. "Haven't you been taught that I want gets nothing? You should say, 'Please may I have first,'" she said. "Please may I have one of them belts and them breeches things?" Archie gabbled. "Please fetch in for him, Miss Edwards. Let's not too be hard on him. He's not much more than a baby," said Mrs. Edwards. "He's a greedy little boy, if you ask me," said Miss Edwards. But she provided him with a snake belt and a miniature pairs of shoes. "Dear me, this shopping trip will cost me a fortune," said Mrs. Waverley, but she didn't seem particularly fussed. There was a tinge of color on her high cheekbones, and she seemed much livelier. I wonder if she ever had children when she was married to Mr. Waverley. Was she still married to him, even though there was no sign of him in the house? Or he died? But weren't widows supposed to wear black? Mrs. Waverley's silk blouse was peach, and her trousers gray, and she had maroon suede wedge sandals. Very fancy. Mrs. Waverley saw me looking her up and down. "I expect you're feeling a little bit left out, Shirley," she said. "Shall we see if we can find you some new clothes, too?" "Oh, no, thank you, Mrs. Waverley. This dress is particularly Brand new and it fits perfectly, I said, a little ruffled. Ma bought for me and Julie sales at Darien Homes. I've worn it once, when Dad took Mom and me out for Sunday lunch at the Griffin the day before he left to join the army. We'll had roast beef and Yorkshire pudding, and roast potatoes and carrot and peas, and then trifle for pudding, a special treat. It cost 5 shillings each, an absolute fortune, Mom said, but somehow doesn't taste right. We all left on our plates, even a trifle. When life felt like us sitting there, we didn't know how to talk to each other, as if we were in a play. Mom and Dad were barely on speaking terms anyway. Dad kept licking his lips nervously and running his fingers through his very short hair. I just sat looking at them, wishing I could turn them into the happy, joking Mom and Dads you found in storybooks. I grabbed my arms around myself. You know, it's a lovely, pretty dress, Shirley, but I think you should keep it for the best. You don't want to spoil it running through the woods, do you? Said Mrs. Waverly. And you can't possibly wear it to school. I wanted to wear it to school. I almost look pretty in my magical dress. I wanted Marilyn Henderson to see me wearing it. Well, she'd already seen it just 15 minutes ago, but perhaps she hadn't really taken in it. I think a little girl needs something more everyday and practical, Mrs. Waverly told Miss Edwards. A couple of plain white blouses and a tunic. I felt as if she kicked me in the stomach. I hate the idea of anything plain, and the thought of a tunic was beyond terrible. They were so boxy and punchy, and I had that silly girdle thing. The Street Agatha's girl all looked a nightmare in their huge tunics. Please, could I have not a blouse and a tunic? My mom thinks they're hideous, I said truthfully enough. Perhaps I could have another dress, just a cheap one, maybe pink. There's not much point by you a dress when summer is nearly over, said Mrs. Waverly. Maybe I could have a little bolero to wear over it, one of those fluffy agra ones, I said hopefully. We don't stock anything like that, miss, said Miss Edwards, but we have got white blouses your size and tunic in a choice of 3 colors. I sighed. Do you have purple? I asked. There's no call for purple. We have navy, brown, and bottle green, she said. I couldn't believe she could think that any girl would be happy wearing such a hideous colors. I ended up with bottle green. The tunic looked even worse than I imagined, and the blouse was horrible cut with a silly collar. I felt a total fool standing in front of everyone. Well, let's see how it looked. She said it's a total fool. Okay, here is Shirley. Well, I think it didn't look too bad, right? It's just like a uniform. Yeah, a uniform every day. Everybody usually wears them to school. Perhaps she needed time to set up the blouse, said Miss Edwards, suggesting, and produce one. Bottle green with navy strips. I felt like throttling myself with it, and that wasn't even the worst thing. Mrs. Waverly was looking at my shoes. She needs some new shoes too, she said. But these are my best. I know they look scruffy now, but they'll come up lovely with a bit of polish, I said. I think they're a bit too small for you, said Miss Edward, bending down and prodding my toes through the soft leather. My goodness, yes. Take that stool off, child. When I didn't immediately unbuckled it, she did it herself, pulling my foot out and then peeling up my socks as if I were a toddler. I curled my toes over quickly, but she saw all the sore red bits. For goodness sake, what was your mother thinking of, letting you hobble around in shoes like this? She said. My shoe fitted me perfectly back home. My feet must have grown suddenly, I declared ridiculously. I've obviously known for a week that my shoes were pinching, but hadn't said a word because I loved them so. Never mind, Shirley. We'll get you some nice new shoes, and you'll be able to skip round with a care in the world, said Mrs. Waverly. Miss Edwards checked my size, and I went to look for a pair, climbing up a ladder to peer at the labels on the stacked shoe boxes. Could it be red patent again? I called. We don't stock red patent. Mrs. Edwards' mouth puckered as she said the words. Well, black then. I asked. Black patent with a strap around the ankle. We don't go in for anything fancy, miss, said Miss Edwards, seized a box. Ah, these are lovely leather. They were brown laced up, the most hideous shoes in all the world. I had a struggle not to burst into tears. I laughed frantically when they made me try them on, insisting they'd rub and they were desperately uncomfortable. But Miss Edwards said they're soft enough after a couple of wears. I don't know why you're making such a fuss, Shirley. They look very smart and sensible, said Mrs. Waverly. I looked down at her maroon such wedge sandals reproachfully. Your shoes aren't sensible, I pointed out. Miss Edward gasped. The cheek of it. Don't you dare take that tone with Mrs. Waverly, especially if she's been kind enough to buy you these lovely new things. I didn't ask for them, I retorted, though I knew I was being very rude. I don't know why you bother, madam. I really don't. It's a real shame you have them slum children foisted upon you. I don't know how the village is going to cope. That Mrs. Henshaw trying to get me to take a pair. Would you believe? When I've got father in his wheelchair in the back of the shop forever needing attention, and the business to run 5.5 days a week. She said the evacuees could help at the shop, as if I'd let them near the till. Archie wasn't paying attention, too busy snapping his neck belt and marching around his baby brooches. But Kevin was standing up straight, glaring. We're not thieves, he said. And we're not slum children, I said. I rather thought that Kevin and Archie were, and I felt that solidarity was called for. Miss Edwards sniffed, clearly disagreeing. Perhaps you could grab the children old clothes and give me the bill, Miss Edwards, Mrs. Waverly said coolly. Her tone was wonderfully dismissive. Miss Edwards bustled off, sniffing again. The poor lady has an invalid father, who's a difficult man. Her nerves are frazzled. Take no notice, Mrs. Waverly murmured. Please, can't I wear my own clothes home? I begged, worrying dreadfully about going back to the town. If Marilyn Henderson and Mary were still lurking, they'd laugh themselves silly at the sight of me. These are your own clothes, Mrs. Waverly said gently. I think you look very smart, Shirley. I wore a practically identical outfit when I was a little girl. That was the point. I looked terribly frumpy and old-fashioned in my long, droopy tunic and awful sturdy shoes. If Mom would see me now, she'll be appalled. I wish I could fish my postcard out of the letterbox and add a postscript. They have stolen my party dress and my best red patent shoes and given me hideous new clothes. I couldn't possibly wear these clothes to school. I wear my pleated skirt and my jumper, and I just have to put up with the itching. And maybe I could borrow the sharp pair of scissors and cut along the front of my red patent shoe to keep them peep-toes, and they'll fit perfectly. I felt a little comforted as we went out of Edwards and horrible daughter and started trailing back down the street towards the car. I looked around anxiously for anyone from my school. All the Paradise Road pupils seemed to have gone now, but there was a purple crocodile proceeding down the pavement instead. Oh, I said, peering at all the street Agatha's girls. There, right at the end, was a girl with a plate by herself, hopscotching down the gutter and twirling her straw boulder by the elastic. Jessica! She looked up in my direction and then gave a great whoop. She came running over and gave me a huge hug. Shirley, oh Shirley, how wonderful! I thought. I'd never see you again. What on earth are you wearing? Have they stuck you in a convent too? She gabbled. Who's she, Cheryl? Kevin asked. She don't have to talk posh, said Archie, giggling. Oh, Jessica, I said, hanging on to her. It was wonderful that she was so pleased to see me. I turned my back on the boys. Luckily, Mrs. Waverly has been waylaid by a lady with a string bag full of onions, asking her if she'd turn part of her ground into a public allotment for the war effort. How are you? Jessica asked urgently. Are you with them? She said, nodding with Kevin and Archie. They had snatched an old tin from someone's dustbin and starting a game of kick the can. Yeah, worse luck, I whispered disloyally. And her? said Jessica, glancing at Mrs. Waverly. "What's she like?" I wrinkled my nose. I couldn't find the right words. I suppose she's quite kind, but she's a bit odd sometimes. She got a very funny house, ever so big. We're at one up the opposite hill to you. Some of it's very grand, but most of it's empty. We haven't even got beds. Neither do I. We have to make do with the most awful camp beds, and they're all so old and rickety, and they all collapse when you turn over. We all squash together. One whole row of girls to each room. It's quite ghastly. And you know what Goofy and Munchkin are like. They're being so childish and irritating. Jessica complained. She was looking at my bottle green tunic, holding out the pleats and playing with the girdle. "If you don't mind saying, your tunic is even worse than mine." I know, I said miserably. "Still, take heart. The ballet shoes, sister, were always fussing over their clothes, weren't they? Now, quick, Shirley, how are we going to meet up again? Can you come down to the village next Saturday? We're allowed to spend our pocket money here in the afternoon, though we're stuck with dreadful Sister Josephine." I stuck my fingers sideways under my nose like a mustache, and Jessica giggled. "I expect I could ask Mrs. Waverly," I said. "Can't you come by yourself? Not with her. And don't bring these boys either." Jessica whispered in my ear. She took my elbow and steered me several feet away from them. "I'll try not to," I promised, though I didn't really know how. "We could sneak up somewhere, just the two of us," said Jessica. "Yes, and maybe run away together?" "Oh, yeah, definitely," I said. It was as if we were in a storybook girl starting an adventure. "Do you have any money?" Jessica asked. "I've got half a crown hidden in my bottom of gas mask case," I said proudly. "I've never had so much money in my life. I got 6 pence a week, but I've always spent it on the comic and a sherbet fountain and penny chocolate bar. My half crown wasn't a proper pocket money. Mom said it was for emergency, but Shirley Runaway always cut it as that." Jessica looked disappointed. "Half a crown isn't gonna get us very far," she said. "Nanny lives in Wales now, and a train ticket there costs at least £1, probably more, and there's two of us." I was a little startled. I hadn't realized Jessica wanted to run away somewhere Pacific. I didn't want to run away to this nanny person. I wanted to run away to London and my mom. "Do you have any money yourself?" I said. "No, my horrid mother wouldn't give me a farthing," said Jessica but bitterly. "But I thought she's rich. She's a famous actress." "She is rich, stinking rich, but she's too mean to give me any money. She said she can't trust me, and I only used it to try to run away," said Jessica. "But that's what you want to do." "Yes, but it's still mean of her. All the other kids have pocket money. They're all scoffing sweets now. I shall probably starve to death. We hardly got any food at Lady Amersham's. We had the tiny sliver of tongue and pickled beetroot. Yeah, that was even nice. And a Wynn's potato for lunch today. Would you believe I've got stomach pains from sheer hunger?" Jessica said dramatically. I murmured sympathetically. "What's the grub at your place like then?" she asked. "Well, last night we just had bread and milk," I told her. "Goodness, that's baby food." "Yeah, and we had the most disgusting dinner today. Rabbit pie. I was sick," I said. "Rabbit pie is actually quite tasty," said Jessica. "But it's awful eating rabbits. This woman Chubby, she's a sort of servant. She went out with a gun and shot one. Can you imagine? Maybe we'll have a squirrel pie for our Sunday dinner after tomorrow. Or badger pie, weasel pie, rat pie," said Jessica. We both fell out laughing. Mrs. Waverly came over, having finally shaken off the allotment lady. "Do you two know each other or something?" she asked. "Oh, yeah, we're best friends," said Jessica. "How do you do, Mrs. Waverly?" "I'm Jessica Lippman. I'm at Street's Agatha's. It's so fantastic that Shirley and I have been evacuated to the same village. It's such a shame we can't see more of each other. I wish I could visit Shirley to tea tomorrow, but the nuns are inhospitable. She emphasized the grown-up word, hissing in a little. We aren't allowed to invite anyone to the convent, even though it's not really a convent anymore. It's just a lot of girls and a few nuns squashed into Lady Amersham's house. I wonder if you know Lady Amersham, Mrs. Waverley. I do, as a matter of fact. We've only met her very briefly. So she's this little old lady who was with a stick. Though she didn't seem at all frail, she's very strict and bossy, rather like a nun herself, said Jessica. I think that's a very accurate description, Jessica. My sister is formidable, Mrs. Waverley, said Mrs. Waverley. Your sister? Oh, crikey. I didn't mean to be rude. I'm so sorry. I didn't take any offense. My sister and I are estranged. I was astonished. I wonder what on earth had made them quarrel, but Jessica took in her stride. Oh, goodness. How I wish I could be estranged from my relatives, she said. Well, I'm glad I haven't totally put my foot in it, because I was rather angling for you to invite me to tea with Shirley tomorrow, seeing as I can't have her to tea with me. Would that be all right, do you think? Jessica looked at Mrs. Waverley, pleading, while I held my breath. Mrs. Waverley looked amused, but shook her head. I'm afraid I'm going to have inhospitable too. We're rather at full stretch as it is. We only have Kevin the older boy on a temporary basis. I glanced around, but Kevin was still kicking the can with Archie, too far away to hear, his ears looking especially prominent from the back. I feel painfully sorry for him. Oh dear, I would have loved to come to tea, said Jessica, not giving up. I'm sorry, said Mrs. Waverley briskly. Now I think you'd better go, Jessica. That Nana over there is in your direction, is pointing in your direction. Jessica looked over her shoulder. Oh, Lordy, Sister Josephine is clearly on the warpath. I better hop in. She gave me a hug and breathed in my ear. See you next Saturday. Come along then, Shirley. Let's get back to the car before I find half of the evacuees inviting themselves to tea, said Mrs. Waverley. Still, your friend Jessica's rather sweet. Quite a little card. She called to the boys. Kevin kicked the can high over Archie's head, and it clattered alarmingly against a drain pipe. Kevin, for goodness sake, your big window in a minute, said Mrs. Waverley. You can't play games like that in the village high street. I play in our street all the time. We all do, he said. Where else are we gonna play? He got her there. Well, it is considered very rude and uncouth to kick filthy old cans about the street here. Look, you've got baked beans juice all over the toe of your new breeches. You're gonna have to learn how to behave. Come on, all of you. Back to the car. She took Archie's hand and pulled him along. He swung on her arm, stamping heavily in his new shoes. It was Archie who rode about in that dustbin. Kevin muttered resentfully. Why doesn't she give him a telling off too? Because he's little, I suppose, I said. Yeah, right, little twerp, said Kevin. I don't see why I always lumber with him. Just because we're both boys. It's you and me who should be pals because we're the same age. I was startled. You want to be my friend? Kevin's ears went red. Not like a girlfriend, stupid, like mates. Oh, I see. Well, I suppose we are, but Jessica is my actual best friend, I said proudly. That stuck-up purple pain? Kevin sneered. Don't you dare call her that. And she's a not stuck-up. She's ever so friendly, I insisted. She's even worse than you, toffee-nosed snobs. Both of you, said Kevin. I blinked at him. Make your mind up. First you want to be Paul's and then you start insulting me and my best friend. I said. Best friend? You didn't even know her before you got on the train yesterday, said Kevin. And you'll probably never see her ever again. Yes, I will so. Next Saturday in the village. It's all arranged, I said. So I've got to mess about with Archie while you two girls jack on, blah, blah, blah. Kevin moaned. I wonder if he was jealous and felt a bit guilty, but he was so irritating in the car on the way back, leaning forward and untying my hair ribbon and tickling the back of my neck that I decided not to care. It didn't look as if he would be staying long anyway. Shall we give us plenty of bread and butter in the kitchen. I was starving and buttered my 2 slices too quickly. I eyed the half load of bread on the kitchen counter. You wouldn't be so hungry if you eat my lovely rabbit pie properly, said Chubby, but she cut me another slice. Did you really shoot with a gun, Chubby? Archie asked. Well, how else am I going to kill it? It's not going to wander in here and jump into a pie by itself, is it? Please don't, I begged. Where did you keep your gun, Chubby? Can we look at it? Hey, can I have a go with it? Kevin asked eagerly. Do you think I'm daft? She said. Can I have another slice of bread? Asked Archie. She's got one. You can't have another slice till you eat all them crusts up, said Chubby. Don't think I can't see you've hidden them all under your plate, you daft little mite. They hurt my teeth. Archie whined, angling his head artfully. Oh, teeth hurting, are they? Well, there's the very fierce dentist in the village. He'll fix you up good and proper. None of them are fine, really. Archie tried stuffing all his discarded crust into his mouth in one go, and then choked and coughed, spraying them everywhere. You mucky little monster, said Chubby. But she cleaned him up, wiped the kitchen table, and then cut him another slice of bread after all. Kevin opened his mouth. Yeah, you can have one too, she said, cutting it. And me, got to build myself up, acting a nursemaid to you three when it's a full-time job, looking after Mrs. Matt and her house as it is. Still, you don't have to do much housework, said Kevin, sniggering. Chubby's eyes opened wide. She stared at him. So he hunched up his gawky frame into a question mark. What have I done now? I ain't do nothing, he mumbled. I'll thank you not to make snide remarks about the state of this house, you little gutter snipe, said Chubby. That goes for you two and all. Her eyes swiveled to include Archie and me. There's things you don't understand. Reasons. Only they're none of your business. Nobody's business. So when you go to school on Monday, you're to keep your mouth shut about everything that happens in this house. Folk have big noses. They're to wheedle things out of you. But you're to keep your lips buttoned up to tight. Understand? You're part of this household, like it or not. So you don't give away no secrets. The three of us nodded solemnly and promised we wouldn't do any such a thing. So that's it. After they promise they won't give away any secrets, that's the end of chapter 12. And I heard in chapter 13, Mrs. Mad played with dolls. I was curious. Well, we all find out in chapter 13. Bye, guys. See you next time.